looking to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching ASEAN in Focus. On tonight's headlines. Cleanup efforts are underway on the blackened coast of a central Philippine island after spillage from a sunken oil tanker washed ashore. A Cambodian court sentenced top opposition leader Kem Sokha to 27 years in jail for treason in a case rights groups say is politically motivated. The Commission on Higher Education, or CHED, condemned hazing in schools and vowed it would remain steadfast in its efforts to eliminate all forms of senseless acts of violence in higher education institutions. The current administration is working hard to improve and modernize the country's transportation system, President Marcos Jr. said, noting that important infrastructure projects are being pursued to reinvigorate the Philippine economy. First in our news, cleanup efforts are underway on the blackened coast of a central Philippine island after a spillage from a sunken oil tanker washed ashore, according to the country's environment minister, as fears of economic and environmental harm grew. Take a look.
What is important is, number one, to determine the extent and contain the spread of the oil. Secondly, hasten the cleanup to prevent further impacts on coastal and marine biodiversity, especially as well on the livelihoods of the local communities. We expect that these efforts will require personnel who will need to work over a period of time. The DNR, however, is committed to support the local government and all our communities in restoring and hopefully regenerating the affected coastal and marine ecosystems.
Now, the oil spill of Naujan Town on Mindoro Island reached the shores of the next 4 municipalities on the island's east coast around noon on Thursday and appeared to be flowing further south, according to Environment Secretary Maria Antonia Loizaga in a statement. As it sailed into rough seas off Naujan on Tuesday, the Princess Empress sank with its cargo of 800,000 liters of industrial fuel oil. The Philippine Coast Guard said another vessel rescued the 20 crew members on board, but the Princess Empress leaked some of its cargo into the sea after initially spilling diesel fuel, which had been powering the vessel. Earlier, empty Princess Empress was reported to carry around 800,000 liters of industrial oil. This is a type of oil used for industrial purposes such as heating or power generation, and it is heavier and less refined than diesel or gasoline. The incident occurred after empty Princess Empress experienced engine trouble brought by overheating while in transit to Iloilo province from Bataan province. The vessel drifted towards Balingawan Point in Naujan and partially sank due to rough sea conditions until becoming fully submerged on Wednesday. In tonight's other news, the Commission on Higher Education, or CHED, condemned hazing in schools and vowed that it would remain steadfast in its efforts to eliminate all forms of senseless acts of violence in higher education institutions. Meanwhile, the mother of the alleged hazing victim, 24-year-old John Matthew Salilig, a chemical engineering student at Adamson University, pleaded with police personnel to coordinate with others for the progress in this case. Take a look.
Naghanap po ako ng mas maagang flight papuntang Cebu, tapos pagdating ko po doon, hindi ko na nga po siya inabutan ng buhay. Kung maaari po ay makipagtulungan po kayo para po mapabilis po yung kaso ng anak ko, katulad po ng dito po sa Cavite po, para po magkaroon naman po ng hustisya yung pagkamatay ng anak ko. At saka po, nananawagan din po ako na sana po ay matigil na po itong hazing na to, kasi Kawawa naman po yung mga anak namin. Sana po ay matigil na po yung fraternity po sa bawat school po dahil parang hindi naman po kasi nakakatulong sa mga kabataan para po magkaroon sila ng magandang kinabukasan.
Kailangan isali yung school administrators dito. May penalty. May kulong din. Titigil yan, sa totoo lang. Para sa akin, abolish na yung paternity. Walang buti yan eh. Kahit alam mo sabihin, walang sakitan, walang gagawin pa rin nila eh. Abolish yan. May penalty ang magpo-form ng fraternity. Para sa akin, kulang. Walang pangil. At implementasyon. May penalty dyan eh. Pero yung implementation, at pagdating sa husgado, dapat yung batas, yung ngipin ng batas. Hindi pa bababae ng sentensya. Yung mga nakaraan nga, nakapag-probation eh. Kasi hanggang Supreme Court bumaba. Reckless imprudence. Kapabayaan. Ano kapabayaan? Kapabayaan hindi pinagamot? Binugbog nyo nga hanggang sa mamatay eh.
Today, the body of the victim already arrived in Zamboanga after being transported to the Edwin Andrews Air Base for the funeral. On February 28, the Regional Crime Laboratory Office of Calabarzon, Cavite, Laguna, Batangas, Rizal, and Quezon towns concluded its autopsy report, which identified the cause of death as severe blunt trauma to the lower extremities. The body was reportedly found at Barangay Malagasang, 1G, in Imus, Cavite on the morning of the same day. In tonight's other news, a Cambodian court sentenced top opposition leader Kem Sokha to 27 years in jail for treason in a case rights groups say is politically motivated. Take a look.
The multi-year process to silence Kem Sokha, based on a fabricated conspiracy, is a miscarriage of justice.
Kem Sokha was the joint founder of the now dissolved Cambodia National Rescue Party and has long been a foe of Hun Sen, Asia's longest-serving leader. Immediately after the verdict, the 69-year-old was placed under house arrest, where he will be banned from meeting anyone who is not a family member. He has 1 month to appeal the conviction and jail sentence. Ang Udom, a lawyer for Kem Sokha, told reporters the court also stripped him of his right to vote and barred him from running for political office. Arrested in 2017 in a midnight swoop involving hundreds of security forces, Kem Sokha was accused of hatching a secret plan in collusion with foreign entities to topple the government of longtime ruler Hun Sen. He has repeatedly denied the charges against him. Critics say Hun Sen has wound back democratic freedoms and used the courts to stifle opponents, jailing scores of opposition activists and human rights defenders. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov spoke briefly in their first face-to-face contact since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The brief encounter occurred during the G20 foreign ministers meeting in the Indian capital, New Delhi. Take a look.
And that they signaled any willingness to release him.
It was a short conversation where the Secretary had an opportunity to remind Minister Lavrov we want Mr. Whalen back, he belongs with his family, and that there is a proposal on the table, we want the Russians to take it. I really, for reasons I'm sure you can understand, I don't want to get into what the back and forth was on that, or detail the conversations that we're still trying to have with the Russians about getting Mr. Whalen back.
Just briefly on.
Now, the last time Blinken and Lavrov were in the same room was at a G20 meeting in Bali, Indonesia in 2022, where Lavrov said is to have stormed out, according to Western officials at that time. The U.S. said there is no indication China has decided to supply weapons to Russia, but believes the possibility is still on the table. Take a look.
I certainly would expect, in the context of talking about what's going on in Ukraine, that the issue of third-party support to Russia could come up. They have reached out, as you know, to Iran. They've reached out to North Korea. But I don't want to get ahead of where we are here. We haven't seen the Chinese make this decision. We don't think they've taken it off the table, but we haven't seen them make a decision to go forward. We've communicated privately, certainly publicly, our concerns about that. We believe it's not in China's best interest to move forward in that regard, and they should see it the same way. I just don't think it's helpful right now to hypothesize about what consequences might result. Secretary Blinken has talked about the fact that there would be ramifications, and I think that's probably better if we just leave it at that.
U.S. officials have launched a broad diplomatic offensive over the past week to warn China against providing lethal assistance, which experts say could have a profound impact on the war in Ukraine as it enters its second year. The statement echoes the comments made by German Chancellor Olaf Scholz earlier on Thursday. Beijing has forcefully denied allegations that it is considering arming Russia. Meanwhile, the Kremlin accused Ukrainian fighters of entering its territory in a region bordering Ukraine, which Moscow labeled as a terrorist attack. Russian President Vladimir Putin said neo-Nazis and terrorists had opened fire on civilians in the southern Bryansk region. Let's listen in.
Сегодня совершили очередной террористический акт, очередное преступление. Проникли на приграничную территорию и открыли огонь по гражданским лицам. Видели, что это гражданская машина. Видели, что там сидят гражданские лица и дети. Нива обыкновенные. Открыли огонь по ним.
Now, Ukraine responded to the accusation, saying it was a deliberate provocation. Russia wants to scare its people to justify the attack on another country and the growing poverty after the year of war, Ukrainian presidential advisor Mikhailo Podolyak said on Twitter. Meanwhile, Ukrainian tensions disrupted a G20 meeting in India, with Lavrov telling the assembled foreign ministers that Western representatives had derailed the meeting, calling it a farce. Take a look.
Быть конкретным, Запад настаивал на воспроизведении текста по ситуации вокруг Украины, который был согласован на саммите «двадцатки» в прошлом году на Бали, игнорируя полностью наши аргументы о том, что с тех пор произошло немало событий, включая чистосердечные признания госпожи Меркель, господина Олланда, господина Порошенко, да и самого Зеленского, что никто из них не собирался выполнять минские договоренности. И также отказывались они в этом контексте принять еще один факт, который отражает произошедшие с тех пор события, имея в виду террористический акт против газопроводов системы «Северный поток». Наш призыв к тому, чтобы отразить в документе необходимость беспристрастного, честного расследования, категорически отвергался нашими западными партнерами. Поэтому...
Yes, on one particular issue, because of very polarized views of some countries, we were not able to bridge it on this particular occasion. Whereas, as our colleague pointed out from there, we were able to do that with, a number of us were able to do that collectively in Bali.
Now, discussions over the joint statement faltered on several issues, including Russia's insistence on an investigation into the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipeline last year, according to Mr. Lavrov. Russia and Western countries have traded accusations of responsibility for the September explosions, but so far, investigations by Swedish, Danish, and German authorities have not pinned the blame on any one country or actor. A Malaysian court acquitted jailed former Prime Minister Najib Razak of a corruption charge, but he will continue to serve a 12-year prison term from another case. High Court Judge Mohammed Zaini Mazlan said state prosecutors failed to provide sufficient evidence to prove their case that Najib tampered with an official audit report on scandal-racked State Fund 1MDB for his benefit. Najib's co-accused former 1MDB chief Arul Kanda Sami was also acquitted. The charge dismissed Friday, which carried up to 20 years in jail on conviction focused on allegations that Najib used his position to order a report on the 1MDB Sovereign Wealth Fund by the government's official audit body to be altered in February 2016. The changes were aimed at exonerating him from any criminal liability, according to the charge. He was allegedly assisted by Arul Kanda, who was president and chief executive of the fund at the time. Najib, 69, was brought to court Friday from Kajan prison, where he is currently serving a 12-year jail sentence for abuse of power, money laundering, and criminal breach of trust over the transfer of 42 million ringgit from former 1MD unit SRC International to his personal bank account. Malaysia's highest court dismissed his final appeal on that case in August last year and ordered him to immediately begin serving his sentence. His acquittal from the tampering charge doesn't affect the current sentence. Friday's acquittal eased the pressure on Najib, but the former leader still faces dozens more charges, which could lengthen his time in jail. In other news, an Indian state-owned arms manufacturer has shipped artillery barrels to military-ruled Myanmar, according to an activist group warning they could be used by the junta in its crackdown on dissent. The army has used artillery barrages as well as airstrikes against opposition groups as it struggles to crush resistance, according to rights organizations, sparking international calls to stop supplying weapons to the junta. In October, state-owned arms manufacturer Yantra India Limited sent 20 gun barrels to Myanmar measuring 122 millimeters. Shipping data obtained by activist group Justice for Myanmar shows. The consignee for the cargo, which was valued at $330,000, was Innovative Industrial Technologies Company Limited, based in the commercial hub Yangon, according to data shared with AFP. Last year, the same company won a junta tender to install and configure security appliances at a data center, according to documents seen by AFP. The barrels were likely used to make artillery for the military, according to Justice for Myanmar. Yantra India Limited has state-of-the-art steel-making facilities for gun barrels and other components of artillery and tank guns, according to its website. Yandra and Innovative Industrial Technologies did not respond to emailed requests for comment. AFP has contacted India's Foreign Ministry for comment, but hasn't yet received a response. The current administration is working hard to improve and modernize the country's transportation system, according to President Marcos, noting that important infrastructure projects are being pursued to reinvigorate the Philippine economy. Take a look.
Let me again highlight the most salient features of the whole NSCR. It will reduce travel time from Clark Airport to Calamba in Laguna to less than 2 hours. A total of 51 commuter train sets and 7 express train sets will operate along the line, and it can accommodate as many as 800,000 passengers per day. During construction, approximately 110,000 direct and indirect jobs will be generated. Once completed, this railway will offer safe, affordable, convenient, and accessible transport to Filipinos.
Today marks another important milestone for quality infrastructure development of the Philippines. I'm extremely honored to speak before you today in the presence of His Excellency the President at Malacanang Palace to witness this signing of the contract package NS01 for the electromechanical system and track works. It is the largest single contract amount to be awarded throughout the country's history, and truly critical and fundamental part of the modern railway system.
This is a milestone towards the realization of the full north-south commuter railway line, which will significantly reduce the travel time between Clark International Airport and Calamba City, Laguna, once completed. I certainly commend the efforts of the men and women of the Department of Transportation for this major undertaking. Indeed, this service that you have shown in materializing our grand vision for our Philippines, it is ready to take on the future, is a very important part of the transformation of our economy. I certainly must thank the government of Japan and the Japan International Cooperation Agency for the financial support in the implementation of CPNS-01 and for being active partners in the country's infrastructure development. We are glad to have you with us as we continue to strengthen our relations built on mutual confidence and cooperation, a relationship that has gone on for many, many decades. And I can say without a fear of contradiction that the development of the Philippines, especially in terms of infrastructure, has shown that Japan has taken a very, very important part in that. JICA, of course, as the leading agency of the Japanese government, but certainly from the initiative of the Japanese government. Because Japan serves as a key inspiration for the Philippines for having an efficient and rail transport system. I was joking, Mr. Sakamoto, earlier, and I said, now that we have this, maybe the next one is Shinkansen already we can have in the Philippines. So I thank Mitsubishi Corporation for working with the Philippine government on contract package NS-01. It's my hope that the DOTR and Mitsubishi Corporation will not waver in their commitment to finish the contract package by 2028.
Now, President Marcos also lauded the Department of Transportation and Mitsubishi Corp for their commitment to finish CPNS-01 by 2028 and thanked the government of Japan and the Japan International Cooperation Agency for the financial support in the implementation of the CPNS-01 as well as for being active partners in the country's infrastructure development. As my usual habit, I'd like to end the day on a positive note. Let's encourage and build each other up so that no one is left behind. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles. Stay in the news because we live in extraordinary times. Good night.